Thank you very much. So without further ado, Professor William Knottenbelt is going to talk to us about the challenges and opportunities of cryptocurrency. Thank you very much.
Lovely. Thanks very much, Stefan. Hi, everyone. It's absolutely fantastic to be here and to see there's so much energy and so on still in the room this late in the day. So I'm Will Knottenbelt, as Stefan has said. I head up the Imperial College Centre for Cryptocurrency Research and Engineering. Quite a mouthful, I know. But what I'm here to do is to give you the perspective from a kind of like a university academic viewpoint. We were very lucky that in about 2013, 2014, one actually of our teaching assistants came and alerted us to this coming wave of technology and basically said we had to pay attention. And fortunately we did. We started to do projects with the students. We started to set up something called the Imperial Bitcoin Forum. And then eventually we managed to also found an official college center, which brings together academics from all sorts of different departments around the college. But obviously, there's not time here to tell you about everything that's going on. I think a lot of the other speakers have done a fantastic job of giving a good overview of some of the main issues in the area. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about one or two selected things that I think of interest to me. Everything here is not investment advice or endorsement of tokens, people, companies, products, or whatever, right? And everybody should once in their lives read one of those Road to Ruin style books where they tell you should invest in fine art and museum quality fine art and physical gold and property, right? You'll notice cryptocurrency isn't in that list. So the thing about being in a university is that typically a university is actually all about becoming an expert in a single discipline, right? And actually, what happens to us is we go to junior school, we go to high school, and we have a nice rounded knowledge. And then we go to university and we start to specialize, right? And maybe we do a bachelor's degree and then a master's degree. Maybe we begin a PhD, right? And we get to the frontiers of knowledge. And then we do something like a PhD. We made this very small imprint in the frontier of knowledge. And the idea here is that there's this view that you have to be ever so specialized in order to push the boundary of knowledge forward. And actually, in the crypto space, that's actually just not true, right? If you think about this fantastic tweet, which I found just the other day, right? There's so many different subjects here that this space brings together, technology, economics, and so on, right? And I just thought of a few more there last night, just to add to the list. And you can see these are all topics that have all come up in all the other presentations today, which has been really great to see. But it also means no one person can do justice to this space. And it's about assembling the right team of experts and the right team of all-rounders as well, who can bring all of these things together. I'm just going to go through some of the other challenges we see. So one question is, what are these cryptocurrencies worth? How do you give an objective valuation to them, right? Even what kind of assets are they? Are they limited edition high fashion items? Are they commodities, right? Do they behave like traditional foreign currencies? Or what is the case, right? And how much of the traditional valuation methods that we have for things like commodities and equities and so on, can we actually take and transfer into the crypto domain? Also, I think part of the problem with all the uncertainty in the domain is that nobody understands really what are the fundamentals that are driving these crypto assets, right? There's certainly, for a lot of them, there's a cost of production. It takes a certain amount of electricity, right, to generate a particular token. You can maybe say, well, that should maybe put a floor in the value of the tokens. But for many of the other ones of them, it's much less clear. Also, we're used to, for other assets, reporting all kinds of metrics. Like for stocks, we have price-earnings ratios and so on. And the question is really, for crypto assets, what kind of metrics should we be reporting? And these are all issues that we are looking into. So who can be the first to decode this slide? Forks throw spanners in the works. Yeah. One of the things that happens in the blockchain space is blockchains are supposed to be a single source of truth. Right? They're supposed to be a chain of blocks which grows nicely. But what happens every now and then, of course, is the community has a disagreement, or there's some major hack or something, they need to recover it, and then the blockchain will fork into two parallel blockchains, and suddenly we have a divergent view of the history going forward. And if you remember the case of like the Ethereum and Ethereum Classic split, in one fork of that blockchain split, they decided, well, we'll pretend this great big fraud that happened in the DAO didn't happen, and in the other one, they said, well, we'll pretend it did, right? So we'll keep everybody happy by having two parallel universes going forward, right? And the problem is this creates havoc in the valuation space, right? If you think you have a financial contract whose value depends on, say, the price of Bitcoin or something, and suddenly Bitcoin has forked into, well, the original Bitcoin and then, say, a new token, the value of which is completely uncertain, right? What do you do? That's a big headache for everyone. There are also other problems that forks cause, of course. So in the Ethereum and Ethereum Classic split, we had the problem of transaction replay, where people making transactions on the one network accidentally had their transactions broadcast on the other network and suddenly started moving tokens around that they didn't think of, right? Also, in the Bitcoin Cash split, it's been very interesting to follow because they knew about the transaction replay problem. What they didn't anticipate is that there would then be a wild fluctuation of the mining power, right, from one network to the other, because at any one time, it's actually only economically rational to mine either Bitcoin or Bitcoin Cash, but not both, right? So you can see how the hash rates have fluctuated and even flipped over at some point. So there's this great website, fork.lol, that you can go to and see lots of similar kind of statistics. So a lot of people have talked about the challenges of scaling blockchains, and that's absolutely a problem because Bitcoin by design has a finite bandwidth in terms of the amount of transactions it can process. Right? And we have to be careful because very rapidly we get to a stage where the rate of arrival of transactions into the system is far bigger than the ability of the system to process them, and then you sort of get an unstable, it's like an unstable queuing system. And of course, particularly in the Bitcoin community, because there isn't a product owner and the governance is a bit broken on account of being overly decentralized, right? We really do struggle to get decent solutions to this problem. So if you have a look at how many transactions have been waiting to break in to the Bitcoin network over the last few months, you can see that there have at times been 250,000 transactions queuing up to get in there, right? Now, fortunately, the community has moved to adopt a number of protocol improvements, and people who put transactions into the memory pool have done lots of clever batching tricks and so on to sort this out. So for the time being, this problem is under control, but it's definitely coming back, right? However, this is what the so-called level 2 or solutions and scaling solutions are about, right? The idea is that actually the main Bitcoin chain won't be the place where you will do microtransactions and so on. It will become basically the settlement layer for an off-chain scaling solutions like the Lightning Network and so on. And people are also experimenting with different ways of balancing the decentralization and centralization in order to get the scalability we need. So here is an example of a payments network actually developed by Rami Khalil and Arthur Gervais. Arthur is now a lecturer in our department, and Rami is his PhD student, and this is their project to experiment in that direction. It's worth checking out. We've also seen a big problem, of course, with the languages that people use to make agreements in the blockchain space, particularly in the smart contracts space, people are kind of committing to English contracts which then don't correspond to the underlying code, right? And also, the protocols themselves, right, have problems. Very often, these protocols are not formally proved to be correct. When they have been formally proved to be correct, it's in an environment that really is a little bit artificial and doesn't quite hold in the real world, right? Like the real world doesn't come in a synchronous, coordinated form in which we have time slots of an exact length, right? In the distributed system, every node is a slightly different version of reality and a perspective on what the time is and so on. So we are in this space where we actually need a lot more attention paid to the formal verification of both the protocols and also then the contracts that people run on them in order to make sure that everything is going to execute correctly. Finally, there's just one more thing coming up that I want to draw your attention to. Here are 4 headlines. Now, the amazing thing about these 4 headlines is that they're all from this week. Yeah? And the fact is that we better start paying attention to the advances that people are making in the quantum computing space, because it's going to transform a lot of different areas of our lives, including the way blockchains operate. Right? And it's our thesis that actually people are a little bit closer to developing a fully fledged and pretty powerful and fast quantum computer. Right? As I say, these are just the headlines from this week. If you do a little internet search for yourself, you will find out there's a lot of other progress going on out there. Companies like IBM, Microsoft, Intel, and you can see Google as well. And the question is, well, what does this mean for protocols like Bitcoin? Well, what it might mean is that anytime you reveal your public key on a network like Bitcoin, someone with a fast quantum computer can work out then what your private key was and can hijack your transaction with a higher transaction fee, publish their own variant of that transaction, and say, actually, they didn't mean for that money to go to that address. They meant it to come to mine, right? So the instant you reveal your public key, suddenly you're giving away your private key to a suitably equipped attacker. And we need to do something about that. So fortunately, that is one of the problems we've been working on. It's work led by Ian Stewart, who's our research fellow in the center. If you'd like to read more about it, then just go to that URL there. The basic idea is that Ian has come up with a slow but hopefully foolproof scheme for making sure that people will still be able to spend their Bitcoins even if somebody does tomorrow come up with a fast quantum computer. So those were some of the challenges and so on. What are the opportunities? We see several. So the first is this notion of being able to reimagine the way services are delivered. So here is a proof of concept that we did based around the idea of local government service, in particular waste management. And the idea was to look at, could we reimagine the way the bins are collected and so on. And we did this by coming up with a smart contract-based ecosystem in which the star is the smart bin, right? And the smart bin has a sensor in it, and it knows when it's full. And when it's full, it can alert the contractor who can then go and empty the bin and upload the proof of the bin emptying. There's a new kind of proof, into the blockchain, and the council can inspect this in real time, and local residents can also monitor the quality of the delivery and can upload their own evidence as to whether they think the contract is being delivered satisfactorily or not. Right? You could even have a model whereby the smart bin alerts several contractors at the same time that it's ready to be collected, and then you have to see who gets there first, right? Hopefully fights don't break out, etc. You could also do clever things like empty one smart bin into another, collect your fee, empty it back into the other smart bin, and so on. So you have to be careful when you design these systems that you've got the incentives and so on right. The other thing is, people complain a lot about the energy and so on that's wasted on cryptocurrency mining. Well, here's a wonderful company called Carnot. They're a French startup, and of course they've decided that this is an opportunity, and why not have a smart heater that is also a cryptocurrency miner? It is a very, very interesting journey this company took, because they started in the kind of green, sustainable cloud computing space. The vision was that they would have these units and people would use the graphics cards to render their movies and so on. And they rapidly realized that the best use case for them, in terms of profitability and so on, is to cast them into the form of this incredibly elegant-looking heater, which happens to have two RX 580 graphics cards in it and does about 60 mega hashes of Ethereum power. So do check them out. I see they've just gone public with their product in the last few days. The other thing is, I think we need to think about whether all the transactions that we have out there need to be financial ones. So I don't know if anybody here has a QR code scanner. Try scan that and see what happens. Working? Yeah, great. So what you see here is a QR code that you can instantly use to verify somebody's academic qualifications, right? And this is done by a startup that was set up by some of our alumni. It's called GradBase. And this is what you should have seen when you scan that code. And the idea is that there are transactions put into the blockchain which don't denote the transfer of monetary value from one person to another. It denotes actually the conferral of a degree by a university onto a particular individual. Okay? And this is something that is much better for students because they can go into interviews and be instantly credible in terms of their qualifications. It's better for companies because that process you just did in 5 seconds is something that normally takes like 2 weeks and demands payments of 50, 60 pounds in order to verify, right? And it's better for the universities because they don't have to deal with a constant stream of inquiries about, got this paper certificate here, is it genuine? Is it really from one of your graduates, right? And somebody has to go scratching around in a filing cabinet or an Excel spreadsheet to find out if that's right. So anyway, there's the URL as well for GradBase if you're interested in checking that out. And I'm very pleased to say that UCL have actually taken the step of actually putting degree certificates for some of their students, for some of their courses, into the blockchain. And it's our hope that other universities and so on will adopt this as well. Yeah. You hear a lot about Uberizing this and Uberizing that. I think when it comes to reinventing ecosystems and designing them, we have to be careful, right? We don't just want to disintermediate everybody in an orgy of creative destruction that removes entire sectors of the economy, right? Not at least without having thought about it very carefully first. So I think when you design these token ecosystems, you really have to be careful about whether there's a positive benefit, right? And how best to design that ecosystem so everyone is incentivized to get the behavior that you actually want. So again, some of our graduates here have set up a startup called Aventus. They've had their token sale. They raised $20 million in September last year worth of Ether. It was 60,000 Ether at the time. And what they're doing is taking on the event ticketing market and re-architecting it to get rid of problems like touting and counterfeit tickets and counterfeit events and so on. right? And I think the way that they have done that and the way they have re-architected all the incentives in that system is a great example of how to do it. We're also working with a social impact startup called Alice, which is looking at a very topical subject, which is transparency and charitable giving, right? And if charities in the future are going to be based around smart contracts that people can inspect the state of on the network, then can we allow stakeholders using various levels of privacy to inspect the state of what's going on with the donations, right? So if you've donated money, can you find out, say to a homeless charity, can you find out how many individuals have actually benefited in terms of either getting a tenancy agreement put in place or, say, an employment contract, right? And that's something that they do, and we're very pleased to be working with them. We have an Innovate UK grant that we have with them. One more thing I want to talk about is another startup that we have an Innovate UK grant with. It's a film chain, and the idea here is to redistribute the revenue from films in a fair and transparent manner using blockchain technology in a way that has a lot less friction than the current process, which is all based around paper contracts and legal agreements and people passing around Excel spreadsheets of viewing figures and so on. We see a lot of potential, for example, for the Ethereum blockchain to transform that entire sort of revenue flow. So that's just a little bit about what we've been up to. We do at Imperial run lots of events to which you are warmly invited. The next one we are hosting is actually the London Ethereum meetup, which is on the 14th of March. You do have to register online for that in the meetup website. We also every now and then have these Imperial Blockchain Forum events, usually once a term, so the next one will probably be in June. These are free and open events. As long as there are free seats, you are welcome to turn up and enjoy whatever we have on offer. You can see that the last one that we did, we had a talk on the Bitcoin blockchain with a little bit of insight into how it works and the proof of work mechanism. Then we had a professor from Edinburgh who came down and talked about Cardano and how it works with a mechanism called proof of stake. And then we had an application which is called Medical Chain. So little did we know there were some graduates of the medical school who had gone off and raised 24 million for their efforts to put healthcare records on the blockchain. So we thought it would be good to hear from them. But yeah, if you'd like to get in touch, there's probably no time for Q&A, but if you'd like to get in touch, there is my email, and I will also be around afterwards if you would like to chat to me. Thank you.